Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. It is so nice to see friends, family, and faculty here for my defense. I'm very excited and very grateful that everyone is here. I'm going to talk about my research on the displacement of a particular community in India in the Valley of Kashmir. It is called the Kashmir Valley. And I have looked at I was basically interested in the dynamics of policies and perspectives of the key actors in a displacement situation. So my research is about policies and perspectives of key actors in displacement. But before I begin, I would like to acknowledge my committee members, Professor Koristalina. She's my chair, and she has guided me through every step of the way and has kept me on track with my goals and my research objectives. And I'm immensely grateful for Professor Koristalina. My committee member is Dr. Avruk. Dr. Avruk has his immense insight into the cultural nuances and context has really shaped my topic tremendously, and I owe the selection of my topic actually to the guidance of Professor Avruk, who communicated the importance of these two elements in the very first class, PhD class that I attended, and my finalization of the topic is really contributed to the insights that I got from Professor Avruk. My third committee member is Dr. Professor Salushki, who could not be here today, but he has been a tremendous guide as far as learning how to deal with the diplomats. Knowing that I will be interviewing the officials, he showed me a lot of tips and tricks about how to deal with people at level, how to engage the officials, the elite, and how to become. What he taught me most is how to become a diplomat when you're dealing with a diplomat, and the importance of that. And that stayed with me throughout my interview process, because I wanted to become a diplomat when interviewing those people. So I'm immensely grateful. In addition to that, my culture expert advisor is from the School of Public Policy, Professor Thachin Carey, who is actually on his way to India delivering a conference today. But he was a tremendous support as far as vetting my procedure, my technique is concerned, and he shed important light about dealing with the officials in India, because he has know-how, and he showed me the protocol that I should adopt in my research design. So I'm grateful to him. And my family has been of tremendous help to me and tremendous support throughout the process. I am immensely grateful to each and every member of my family. Faculty has been amazing. I have studied with Dr. Sandoli and Dr. Lyons, Professor Lyons here, who have been amazing support, and they have guided me and brought me to this point today. And friends of ESCAR and the World Bank, I'm very grateful to everyone for being here, and you have been continuously supportive. And of course, my research participants, who I never knew. I did not even know even one single participant that I interviewed in India, and I met them, and I'm immensely grateful for them contributing to my data collection, immensely useful insight that they provided to me. I'm dedicating my research to my husband, who has been an unwavering support and tremendously guiding me from day one of my journey. And I'm just very grateful for his continued support. And the IDP families, I'm dedicating my study to the entire community of the people who were displaced in the community and who welcomed me in their home and in their communities and provided all this valuable data. So I am dedicating my study to them. This is my dissertation agenda, as well as my agenda for this afternoon. Basically, I was intrigued by the dynamic of the displaced community and the actors. So basically, my study is about the interaction, about the spillover effects of policies and perspectives. So basically, I have interviewed three communities, the host communities, the IDPs themselves. IDPs are internally displaced persons, and the officials, the policymakers themselves. And my dissertation is organized accordingly. I begin with the historical context, and I conclude with the findings and some recommendations. I make humble recommendations to different communities And then I have a few annexes of importance. One of them has to do with the testimonials that I got from the families, which are important part of my research. The context of my research is, general focus of my research is the internal displacement. Internal displacement is, it happens when people are forcefully evicted from their homes. The key word is forcefully. So this is the forced displacement. So this is the general context of my research. Specifically, I'm looking at 250,000 people in the valley of Kashmir, Kashmir Valley. And the displacement of this, this is a community, minority community, situated in a Muslim majority state. So basically, I'm looking at that community which was displaced, being surrounded in this Muslim majority state in 1989. The geographical context of my research has to do with Kashmir. Kashmir is a very large area, and it's surrounded by many countries and is administered by different countries. But my research is bound by the south portion of Kashmir, which is India administered portion. In other words, it is called Jammu and Kashmir. So I look at that part of the Kashmir. So my study is bound to that geographical context. I can give you a little bit of historical context. The current problems can be traced to the British divide of India in 1947. We can indirectly trace that because after the divide, the Kashmir also was divided between India and Pakistan. And 16 years after the division, things were okay, but after that, the Kashmiri nationalism took over. And the result of that insurgency took hold of this Muslim majority area called the Kashmir Valley, and thus the displacement of the Kashmiri Hindu Pandits, they are called. This is just to put things in the context. Kashmir is a large area, but I look at this Jammu and Kashmir controlled by, or actually, this is not a map that I have drawn. So I really like to say administered by India rather than occupied or controlled. I like the word administered. So I look at the Jammu and Kashmir area as opposed to the Pakistan or China area. I have done a lot of literature. Actually, my literature review began from the first class in the PhD program and continues to date. I have looked at 3,000 pieces of literature throughout my study. Literature has, it could be blogs, it could be news items, it could be studies. So 3,000 pieces of literature were actually looked by me. What I found in the literature is that internal displacement, I came to understand through literature, is a multi-pronged phenomena, multi-dimensional. What I looked at, what I concluded from looking at the literature is that scholars have looked at individual specific aspects of internal displacement. And a lot of studies have been done, global studies have been done from United Nations, from Norwegian Refugee Council has also done studies on internal displacement, and Turkish Institute has also done. But what is about these studies is that they are looking at specific aspects. For example, the policy framework or the legal framework or the anthropological framework. So Kashmir studies have also been done by a number of scholars, so not only from that part of the world, but from the global areas also. I looked at studies by Evans, a political scientist, and many others. What I found after doing my literature review is that there was a maze of literature, and it seemed to be all over the place. I wanted to be in a position to organize the literature, to make it more meaningful for my purpose, to understand what has not been addressed, what is missing, and actually what are the spillover effects of displacement and so on. So I wanted to have a frame where I can put the whole literature into like a hanger, like a closet. And I resorted to using Dugan's nested model, which is used to analyze conflicts at interactive level. And that's how I came to see internal displacement as a multidimensional, interlocking, embedded issue-related phenomena. So I resorted to using Dugan's nested model to put everything in a framework. Empowered with these literature review, all these insights, I set goals for my own study. Having looked at the study and having looked at the unaddressed issues, now I felt empowered to do something myself. And basically what I wanted to do, I wanted to contribute to this ongoing, but what I kind of sensed was incomplete literature. Why incomplete? Because it did not talk about the inter-actor dynamic as much as I really wanted to understand. It did not talk about the spillover of policies and positions, which I really wanted to understand. So it was incomplete literature in my view. At the same time, I wanted to be in a position that my effort would lead to some kind of policy guidance. So this was one of my goals, to inform the policy. And I think the significance of my effort at that time, I thought is mandatory for any kind of societal reforms as well as policy reforms. So in the framework of conflict resolution, I thought my effort rightly fits, and I think it's a significant issue for me to venture into. I developed my theoretical framework with first of all defining what is IDPs, and I used the most relevant definition, most prevalent definition, which is from the United Nations Guiding Principles. Basically, IDPs, or internally displaced persons, are people who have been forced to flee home to avoid generalized violence. But in addition to that, we also have natural disasters that displaces people. The National Development Goals also displace people. So these are the IDPs. I came to understand internal displacement to be a complex conflict issue. And why do I say that? I say that because when a person is displaced, it magnifies all aspects of a human being. So that's why I think it is a complex issue. Just becoming displaced doesn't mean you lose your belongings and your home. Dr. Carlos, please. So, so this is what I wanted to do. I understood that this is complex. Also complex because it involves dynamics of groups, intergroups, of host community and IDPs. It involves a relationship between the powerful and the powerless. So I look at it as complex dynamic. And of course, my literature review showed me that the issues are connected. Political issues can be connected to the economic issues, and sometimes they are hidden. So there are connecting issues. Causes basically are deep structural problems, the divide, all kinds of divide. Good afternoon, Professor.
How are you?
Thank you so much. The causes of displacement are many. These are deep structural problems and divides of many kinds, inequities, wealth inequities, and so on. And as I just said again before, that significance of studying this topic was tremendous, because conflict-induced displacement means something. It means that there is a problem in society. It indicates something. So it is important. It's important for us to study. And basically, what it does, conflict-induced displacement. What happens is that when people are displaced, because they stay inside their borders, they don't cross an international border. They stay tied to the structures that oppress them. So this is quite relevant for our purpose in conflict resolution. Having looked at many issues of displacement through my literature review, I came to understand that having lost one's physical abode was the key issue, and I termed that as houselessness of people. And to me, as I looked at literature, it was more than losing the physical structure of your home. When you become displaced, you lose your community, you lose your belonging, you lose your place. So houselessness to me was a specific issue which I placed very neatly into my nested model, which is not a pyramid, but is an interactive nest of connections. Next, I wanted to look at the fit of the people in the society. When people are displaced, the issue becomes, after losing your home, you move to a new society. And that introduces how you fit into the society. So the issue of fitting, a relational issue as per our nested model became another issue. I was interested in understanding that why is it that when people move to even to a wealthy society, that the wealthy society becomes, has a group mentality and becomes disturbed with the arrival of the IDPs, even if their own resources have not shifted at all. So the theory of relative deprivation really pinpointed as to why is it that even the wealthy society becomes hostile, becomes jealous. So the theory helped me to do that. Then next, I wanted to understand that when one is removed from their physical settings, the icons that made meaning to them, the things that provided them sense of continuity, when you're removed from them, what happens to you? And the concept of cultural context really zeroed in on the importance of being removed from your community as a process of displacement. And since I was interested in policymakers, I wanted to understand that why is it that policies exist, but they are not working, they are not effective. And the theory of positioning really pinpointed to me that is more than just formulating policy, is the mindset and the positioning factor. So this theory helped me quite a bit. So based on this understanding, based on the theoretical model, I was puzzled that after 22 years of being displaced, why is it that people have not been able to return to their homes? So I basically asked myself a very simple question. I said, well, how do policymakers, does it have to do with the mindset of how people look at IDPs? So I basically asked very, very simple questions to do my research. I said, well, how do the policymakers and the host community perceive the displaced people? And how does that impact the policies? Next, to bring things to a full perspective, I wanted to understand, well, how do the displaced people position themselves, and how does that impact dimensions of policy like formulation, implementation, and assessment of policy? So these are the basic questions that I set out to explore. In order to find answers to my research question, I set up an exploratory study. And basically, I designed instruments that I thought will be fitting to the culture that I'm researching. So I designed a triangulated approach so as to make it representative and make it credible. I developed a questionnaire, semi-structured face-to-face interviews, because I thought that this is the instrument that will work in the society. In addition to that, I developed oral histories, which gave me a wider lens to extrapolate the experiences of the people. So this was in addition to my interviews on one-on-one basis. Apart from that, I did a policy document analysis. I reviewed Indian government's documents on website, and so I had some way before I went to the field to know what were the policies in place. And I did pilot interviews, which were really good for me, because they vetted my research questionnaire, and they brought the cultural sensitivities that I should be worried about. So these are the things that I did. My data has been analyzed according to themes. Each question was dissected into themes and sub-themes. And later on, I cross-referenced the themes. I saw the connectivities and the divergences into the theme. Just to give you an example, the theme. If I asked a family, well, why did you leave the valley? And the family says, I left the valley because I was threatened, or there were targeted killings. As opposed to another family that says, I left the valley because there was increased Islamization, or I was humiliated. So that answer, these two answers, they made me develop different themes. One theme was fear, and the other theme was humiliation or culture or position. This is how they want their society to be governed. So I developed a lot of themes in my by dissecting each and every question. In addition to that, I have done a lot of comparatives of my data. I did cross-sector, cross-actor. I did cross-city comparisons. I studied 2 cities, basically. And I did correlational study also, one factor versus another factor, and the influence of each factor. So I have done a lot of, and descriptive stats I have. Apart from having prepared myself meticulously for my field research, I was faced with a lot of challenges. And these challenges are pertinent to investigating the IDPs as opposed to the refugees. Now, when you are investigating IDPs, it's a different story, which I did not, I knew, but I did not know that I will face that many hurdles. First one was locating the IDPs. IDPs are mostly in the suburbs, outside the mainstream. So it is very hard. Even the locals do not have know-how. So local insight is not very useful in locating the IDPs. Then the local resistance. This issue of the displacement of the Kashmiri is still framed around the bigger Kashmir problem, which is like a stigma and very sensitive issue for the government. So people are resistant in sharing the information about that. And then the contextual factors are there. This displacement is a protracted displacement, happened 2 decades ago. Even the NGOs that came up in the aftermath of displacement, they have folded up. They have a new mission. So even the NGOs, they don't prove very, very helpful as far as the, you want to see the registration records of the IDPs. They don't have them. So it's really a very difficult thing to investigate the IDPs. Having overcome the hurdles that were presented to me, I was still able to meet more than the proposed number of interviews that I had set out to do. I conducted 94 interviews. I visited 15 IDP camps in 3 cities. I interviewed 50 families. I also interviewed the host community, the business leaders. I interviewed 24 of those, that group. I interviewed officials, 22 officials, the policymakers, implementers, as well as the NGOs. My top level interviews, Professor Sarushki, I was just saying that you had guided me on how to conduct the interviews with the policymakers. And this is what I remembered when I walked into everyone's office, that first I have to ask. Professor had guided me. First you have to ask or think that your ministry must have done quite a lot. Can you please share 1 or 2 policies that were implemented? And this is how I began each of my interview with the minister. I interviewed top level minister. My top level was a minister of the Joint Secretary of the Ministry of Home Affairs in New Delhi. I also interviewed Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir, Dr. Abdullah. And the National Minority Commissioner, Mr. Habibullah, I interviewed. In addition, I interviewed a lot of magistrates and commissioners in Jammu. And administrators of the IDP camps, I interviewed them, and lots of NGOs I interviewed. IDP camps I visited in all the cities that I went to. I covered a distance of about 1,000 kilometers in my research, and I interviewed from the very first IDP camp with a tin makeshift tent to the latest development is called the settlements, the apartment-like settlements. So I visited all those settlements as well as the makeshift tents. The host communities were all over the place, and I visited them. Now these are the results of my interview with the official. Basically what the people are saying in the ministry is that this crisis, humanitarian crisis, was really a migration. What does it mean? It means that people fled of own volition. So this is the official position of the diplomats there. And what happens when you do that? What happens is that the policies that come out of this kind of mindset will be for the time being. So the policymakers are telling me that we designed the policies, yes, you see a lot of policies, but they are there to alleviate the suffering of the people until they are ready to return. So this is the official stance. They do admit that there is a disconnect between theory and practice, formulation and implementation. They admit, the policymakers admit that policies have not been 100% effective. The policy spillover, of course, the officials are saying that they see good things that have come out of IDP having come to Delhi and Jammu, because we see a lot of cultural exchange and so on. So good things, we like it. Now this photo is very telling. It is very important. This is not a photo that I took. It is a photo from the Force Journal of Forced Migration. What this is very telling because it makes 2 very important points. First, it tells us about the positioning of this displacement as a migration, is a dubbing. Secondly, what it says, this is written by an IDP. It says we are not migrants but displaced, and Panun Kashmir is an NGO. Secondly, what it's telling us is the frustration of the people who have been dubbed as migrants. Migrants means you lose your right to return. And you moved because you wanted economic opportunity or something. So this is a very telling picture, and I really wanted to include this into my research, although I didn't take the photo, but I credit the Journal of Forced Migration. These are my results from interviewing the IDPs. What they are saying, unanimously they are telling me that they fled because there was a lack of security. They were threatened, there were targeted killings. There was increased Islamization. So these are the reasons that they give me. They describe the situation as genocide also. They faced a lot of challenges, psychological, environmental, exposed to different environment and so on. As far as return is concerned, 90% have sold their homes. And so we can imagine what is the intent to return of the people. I asked them about the policy, how they assess the policy. Only 14% of them assess the policies as beneficial to them. I looked at policy not just as assessment of policy, but also I wanted to look at it as a dependent variable. That if you assess policies one way, what else are you saying about the questionnaire, about your IDP experience down the line? So I compared their assessment to their answer to my other questions. So as a dependent variable, I came to a few conclusions there. These are the results of my interviews with the host community. Fortunately, the host, majority of the hosts are describing the IDPs in positive terms. They are saying, well, these IDPs are hardworking people. They are peaceful, they mind their own business, and they're simple people. But when you ask them about the interaction, how do you interact, how is it? Only lukewarm interaction. But now this is interesting. Although they describe the people as hardworking and positive, but they say not good things have happened ever since they came here. There are negative spillovers. Corruption has been introduced. We have overcrowding, and our culture has deteriorated ever since the IDPs came. So of course the host is saying that people will not go back. So no intent to return. I made a lot of comparison across actors, three groupings of actors. I looked at how the three groups look at social change that has happened, how people look at the perception of the IDPs. In addition to the comparison between the actors, I also did cities. I wanted to compare the large city versus the smaller city, the metro city. How do the IDPs in the context of policies fit themselves into these different cities? So there were differences in the challenges of the two cities, metro city versus the smaller city. This chart is at the heart of my research. This scrutiny is the multiplier effect of positions of the three actors. I want to go over this chart. First, official position. Officials are holding two positions at the same time. First, they are saying that displacement is a temporary disturbance. What does it do? It triggers two reactions in the IDPs and the host community. What does it do? In the IDPs, it creates reluctance to embrace the host community, because when you say it's a temporary disturbance, means people will go back. So they have no incentive to embrace the host. And what do the IDPs do? IDPs, they demand the right to return. If it's temporary, please make a return policy for us. What does this do to the host? Based on the understanding that IDPs will go back, why should we invest in them? It makes it easy for them to push them out. Next position of the official is this: displacement was a migratory move. Now this is a position that also has impact on the two communities, on the two groups. First, IDPs feel unfairly treated, that we did not choose to come here. We did not want to leave our ancestral homes. So this is not a migration, we were forced. And then it creates a hierarchy in the host community. You have migrants, and then you build hierarchies of rules and rights where you have inclusion and exclusion. Then the IDP position, they also hold two positions. First, they say that Valley will never be safe for us to go back. So many reasons that they give that it won't happen. What does it do to the policymakers? When they listen to the IDPs, they say, okay, no problem. they pacify the IDPs by continuing the provision of policies. They say, okay, we want you to be happy, so they continue the policies indefinitely. And the host, they come to see the IDPs as freeloaders, as someone here to stay. And then they also say that the return is mandatory, that this is not where we belong, we need to go back. So this also creates a trigger in the policymaker that, okay, we have to make the policy for return. And so they continue their stance that, okay, policy is in the progress. So, so this is what happens. The host position, of course, the host is saying that the IDPs encroach on their resources, and that triggers another kind of impact on the policymaker. They push them out of the community. They say, okay, we will move them out of your community and give them settlements. Based on these insights, I have, because my study is really hope to serve a range of clients. Clients of students of Kashmir studies, students of displacement, conflict resolution, international community. So what I have done, I have structured my findings in a very client-friendly manner. Broad-based findings, I hope to serve the people who are just looking at displacement as such. So these findings are basically what you would find in the displaced communities worldwide. One of them is important, is this one. NGOs. I would like to, let me see. Okay. Oh, probably not working. Anyway, this number 3, I would like to explain this one. NGOs are perceived as fragmenting the IDP community. There is a score of NGOs in this displacement, but the families have lost their trust in them. They are pursuing cross purposes. So they seem to be thinking that they have actually divided our community instead of helping us, because some are proposing for separate homeland, and some NGOs say that return is immediate and we must return. So this is what it has done. Then I have explicit findings which are relevant to the position and perspective of this community. As we can guess, the positions, they preclude the long-term solution, because when you place displacement to be a temporary, so the policy is going to be temporal. So it takes away the long-term vision. One finding that I would like to share with everyone has to do with this number 6. It says older generation keeps the youth from returning. In most displaced communities, it has been highly correlated that the youth are the ones being exposed to the metro societies, being exposed to the economic opportunities, that they stand in the way of the elders from returning to their beloved ancestral homeland. But I qualify their statement, and I suggest that it is not always the case, because what I heard from the youth as well as from the families is the views of the youth too have been influenced by the stories that have been told by the elders. The elders tell this horrific, humiliating story of their displacement. The youth, they watch the resolve of the elders who say it will be humiliating and disgusting to return to the place that humiliated my identity. So the youth too become influenced, and they watch the resolve, and they keep the elders from returning. They say, Mama, you cannot go to that place, because they took away your identity. So it's not always the economic opportunity, it is more than that. So I'm saying that older generation keeps the youth from returning. So this I thought was very telling in my. The last point is also very telling that has come out of my research. The conflicting positions that the officials have taken, they have backfired. They have unintended consequences. They have led to something that they did not want to happen. First, the officials, they say that the IDPs will return, and then they say the IDPs, they migrated and they are here to stay. So what the IDPs sense by this, by the conflicting views of the policymaker, they capitalize on this varying position of the officials. And they say that, okay, sir, if you think we have to return, then please provide us with a home, because my home was burnt. So, but then they say, if you think that we are not going to return, then you have to provide 100% rehabilitation in my new community. You have to give me access to school and everything. So they leverage they capitalize on the conflicting messages that are given by the officials. So they actually the conflicting positions are really meant to favor the elite, to protect them from formulating a certain policy of return, a policy of complete rehabilitation. So the conflicting messages are really meant to protect the elite, but they are empowering the IDPs. So this is what I found in my study. Based on this, I thought make some humble recommendations to different communities. I think international community has a role. It has a role in assisting the nations to help diagnose the issue of internal displacement exactly as it is, instead of risking them to misdiagnose or mischaracterize or dub it in mysterious ways. So I think international community has a role. National governments too have a role. Now the very fact that people have not been able to return for 22 years and you have policies in place is a flag that it is time to revisit the policy intent, policy effectiveness. So national governments have a role. And I think it's about time that we do something bigger than that, and we think about the labeling, because labeling is actually jeopardizing the relationship and is doing a lot. So I recommend these three humble recommendations for different communities. And then I have a research agenda to continue my work. I think with all these findings, I think I'm on track with the goals that I set out to myself in my proposal. I wanted to elevate the understanding of the displaced communities worldwide, and Kashmir in particular. So I think I explored that. Now we have a better understanding of the three-way dynamic between the three groups. I am able to detect some policy gaps into theory and practice. So we have a little model, and I am also handing over to conflict resolution this model of nested model in which we can frame all the issues of displacement and look at them as a connecting thing. So this is my contribution to CR. My data is credible, I think. I took a lot of steps to ensure the credibility of my data. I standardized my research approach by putting it in the semi-structured format, and that helped me a bit because it kept me on track. I asked the same questions from all the participants, and every answer has been tagged to the question that I asked. So there is standardization. As an independent researcher, I was looking at the bereaving community, so I reflected on my role. I was tempted at times to play the role of a counselor, but I had to remember that I'm just a student and a researcher, so I had to reflect on that every now and then. And I have been journaling my process, my technique, my challenges throughout the system, throughout the process. So confidentiality, all the answers to all the questions have been coded and have been given a unique ID. I have not used anybody's name, including the policymaker. So and the data is with me. It has not gone into the hands of anyone. So the data is on my personal computer. So we maintain the confidentiality of the responses. Ethical grounding, I have followed all the procedures that are we are supposed to. I very patiently waited for the HSRB approval to come. I could have jumped to the field before that, but I waited. I spent 1 month waiting. I did not collect any data before getting the informed consent of the participant, including the policymaker, who sometimes said, you don't need my signature. But I said, no, I do, because my college needs it. And it brings credibility to my research. So they not only signed, but they said good luck. So I have everybody's informed consent. Apart from that, although I'm saying my research is very comprehensive, is multidimensional, I have explored so many things, but I have limitations in my study. My study is only limited to the Kashmiri community that fled after the insurgency of 1989. There have been other evacuations, other evictions of the community, Kashmir community. So I had to exclude them from my data, from participating in my research. So it is bound, and then my findings are bound by the policies that were in place. Policies hopefully will keep evolving. families will move on, but my research is bound by the policies in place when I did the research. So this brings me to the end of my presentation, and I'm glad to have shared the research with you. And once again, my committee, Professor Korostelina, continuously guiding me to every step. And actually, the delivery of my study today is the confidence that the professor places in my ability to deliver today. So I'm very grateful. Professor Abruk, the most rewarding part of my research was doing the oral histories of these two families, because those oral histories brought me up close to the families. Not only did I share the pain of the families, but the joy, because they showed me the beautiful picture of Kashmir in the evening. We would sit and watch the albums together, and so I could not have gotten this opportunity if I did not do the oral history. And Professor Salushki, every time I walked into the minister's office, I remembered what you told me. Professor told me that when I go to the community, even the host community which hasn't done anything, but I should tell them that your community is very, very much known to be helping your neighbors and so on. So can you please tell me one or two things that you did? I used that statement, and that's how I got the confidence and the trust of the people. And I walked into every minister's office saying that, thank you, sir. So this is my, and I want to thank my family who's always supporting me. Just I never have to call the call center in Bangalore, because these are my IT experts and the SCAR faculty and everyone here. So absolutely amazing. Everyone's guidance has really brought me to this point today. And so this is the end of my my presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.